Hello, good afternoon, everybody. We are so excited that, this is the very first SSA, Women for Green Impact Series back at our academy today after the lockdown, but we are still observing the safety measures and with very few people, no live audience, and we are very happy that you join us. And of course, I'm really happy to feature, one of our household name in the digital media and the environmental, journalism, Miss Jessica Cheam. So I'm sure that never a day that we don't really, access to digital media or social media, and everybody, and actually some of us are really addicted to it. You feel a little bit like withdrawn if you don't have access to Wi-Fi and all that. So, but I can't say the same 10 years ago, or actually almost 11 years ago, when Jessica actually decided to, switch from conventional print media to digital media. So I don't think I need to introduce too much about Jessica Cheam. Everybody probably know that she is actually the founder and managing director of Eco Business. And when he first started, of course, it was just a very small outfit, but today they have presence in all the Asian, cities with correspondents there. And she also have full-time staff, and not just in Singapore, but in China, as well as the Philippines. And she has a lot of big plans that she is going to share a little bit more. And apart from being a successful journalist, even a businesswoman now, she's also a mother of two that we are going to talk about it later on. So maybe I would like to just let Jessica start the talking. That's in this journey that from your with the Straits Times, the first few years, and almost 11 years now with running Eco Business. What have been, your biggest, the key achievements that you want to share with us?
Thank you very much, Esther. And hello, everyone who's joined us virtually. I'm really happy to be back at the Singapore Sustainability Academy. It's one of my favorite places in Singapore, and it's super green, and really glad to be here with Esther, Chief Sustainability Officer for CDL, who has been a long-time supporter of Eco Business, even from our very early days. Esther, thank you so much for this opportunity.
Great pleasure.
I love to talk about digital media. It's a subject that's very close to my heart, and I love talking about how the media scene has evolved so much. And I suppose, I started my career at the Straits Times, and I had an amazing time there. I still keep in touch with my colleagues, and they're doing a great job covering what's happening in Singapore as well in Asia and what's around the world. But at that time, I actually stumbled into sustainability and ESG and climate issues because I was covering energy. And it was actually when I was covering energy that I was reading up so much about climate change, and I realized, wow, this is an issue that is going to be the defining issue of our era. But then at the same time, nobody was talking about it. And I was really puzzled. I said, I don't understand why mainstream media is not covering it, government is not talking about it. Some businesses did start talking about it, and CDL was one of the early ones. And I thought, okay, perhaps there needed to be a platform in Asia, because Asia is also the fastest growing region in the world. And so that, the birth of Eco Business, decided to start it off as really an experiment. Didn't really think that we would survive to this day, but I feel a little validated now, because ESG and climate change is become such a huge topic of national as well as global interest. But I have to say that, it really is so encouraging to see the media landscape today covering these issues now.
Yeah, precisely. So just now you said that you only started to probably look at energy efficiency and when you covered the story. So that has been a question in my mind also. When you're growing up, was environmental issues or animals or nature your passion? Because the love for the environment, there must be something that trigger off from young. Do you want to share with us something?
Yeah, thanks for the question. I mean, I have to say that I was pretty average kid. It wasn't that I was very especially, had a lot of attention towards the environment. But I remember, growing up being a very outdoors person. I love nature. I love being out in the open spaces. And it was only when I reached university, and I went to Warwick University, and I joined this society called RAG, which is Raising and Giving, that I actually started becoming more connected to these causes. And so then when I returned to Singapore and I started, reporting on climate change, and I realized that actually the one thing that people underestimate is the role of nature in our natural world, and its role in our economy, in our society. People kind of look at, economic issues from a very finance lens. I mean, they don't realize that the natural world actually underpins all our economic activity. So apart from climate change, biodiversity loss is also a huge issue. And I think over the years, I've really grown so much passion for this issue. And I even spent 10 days in the jungle in Puerto Rico on an assignment when I was at the Straits Times, literally living among trees and with the animals and just studying, the relationship between nature and humans and what the impact of men is on our natural world. So that, really kind of stayed with me as well.
I would say that, being a journalist, you were also exposed to a lot of such, leaders like, Christiana Figueres and Jane Goodall and all the big names and all that. So how would you say journalism has actually helped to reinforce your thinking and also passion for the environment and take up this mission to, to really drive change using your media, using your outreach?
Thanks, Esther. I actually have interviewed those two
formidable ladies.
So, Christina Figueres is a force of nature, and she's, she stares at you like deep inside you, and she's such an interesting lady. And obviously, we know that she was instrumental in, getting the Paris Agreement together. And Jane Goodall, of course, such a source of inspiration. And I look at these role models really to think about, what do you want to achieve in life? Because, I think society today has had a really good opportunity to reflect on what really drives our passion and our purpose. And I think I was inspired over the years by these interviewees, these big personalities that I had the opportunity to interview, and they've inspired my own work. So it was in 2013 that I decided to do that big jump, from getting a paycheck at the Straits Times to doing eco-business full-time. And I think that can't look back. It's been a wild ride, and I'm just very grateful that actually we still have a place here and a voice. We think of ourselves as the global voice for sustainable development because it's so important to put out these issues out in the media so that people can talk about it. There can be policy change and there can be societal change as well.
In fact, I think we are very proud of you. I have heard from some leading players in the UN level that they sing praises about eco-business. It's the editorial content, the knowledge and the insight of environmental issues that they really feel that although it's not a huge establishment as yet, but they really like the editorial. So how do you maintain the high level of professionalism in journalistic, presentation of the stories and all that?
Thanks very much, Esther. I think that this is super important because we live in an age of misinformation and fake news right now, and there is so much mistrust in media outlets. And it has been the guiding principle since we started. And I want to give a shout out to my team. This is not a single effort; it's absolutely a team effort. Our deputy editor Robin, he constantly looks at what's going on with developments and the rest of our editorial team as well, and the correspondents that we have across Asia. We come together and we actually put our heads together at what are some of the pressing issues today, where should we invest our resources in covering. And I give you one very simple example. We were the only media organization that was putting scrutiny on bank funding on coal-fired power stations, for example. And you saw last year that the 3 Singapore banks very quickly after one another made that pledge to stop funding coal-fired power stations. And I don't think that would have been achievable if the media wasn't there, putting some scrutiny and spotlight on it, and if the NGOs and civic society groups weren't scrutinizing banks. And that's only just one very simple example, because I think that you're going to see a lot more scrutiny on organizations, whether it's financial institutions or businesses or governments, and the media plays a very crucial role to provide quality information, trusted, accurate information, and timely information.
Certainly, along the value chain, and I know that a lot of people will say that regulator, are the biggest driver. Yes, I agree that regulator can drive change, but I think finance, financial institution definitely can drive change. And don't underestimate media. Like you said, the example is very, very clear that when we have a media story and there is actually some pressure, and that drives change almost overnight. So we are looking at the next level of investor activism, consumer activism, and of course stakeholder activism. You may not be my consumer, my customer now, but you have a voice. So how would you see the younger people as a driving force and also consumers will be able to drive change, for a greener world and a more sustainable world.
Yeah. The definition our forum has been talking about is stakeholder capitalism. So companies and organizations looking not just at the interests of their shareholders, but of all their stakeholders. And so you can see that this shift is happening. And to put another example, BlackRock, the world's largest asset manager, has come out and actually said we're going to put sustainability at the heart of our investment approach. And then if you add on to that the whole transfer of wealth from baby boomers to millennial generation, something like $34 trillion of wealth that is coming to a generation that's more woke to these issues, I think you're going to see a lot more pressure from investors, shareholders, customers, employees, and from society at large for businesses to be doing the right thing. And so I think the guiding principle for organizations today is that you pursue a profit, but you're solving an environmental and a social problem at the same time.
Well, I know that you have always been, advocating partnership, collaborations, and even walk the talk. So you have been actually partnering, well, we are one of your partners. We're very glad that you support our Sustainability Academy and our Eco Bank and all that. We also know that you have actually partnered Temasek Foundation, to drive startup innovations, and it is also one of your pet subjects. So how do you see startup and innovation help to accelerate the green movement?
This is super important, Esther, and I think you've hit the nail on the head, because we are not going to get where we need to be if you think about climate neutral targets and biodiversity loss, inequality, resource scarcity, and pollution. We're not going to solve these problems without innovation and without startups. And so Temasek Foundation, has in partnership with us, come up with this initiative called the Livability Challenge, and it's now grown into Asia's largest sustainability solutions platform. We've done it for 3 years now, and we're just about to launch the 4th edition next year. And really, it's allocating capital where the world needs. And actually, there is a lot of money in this world. It's just not going into the right places. And we had this Sustainable Finance Conference last year in which the chief economist, Adam Harris, was saying that the reason why we're seeing distorted markets is because it's still profitable to invest in unsustainable activities. And so we need the whole finance movement to be investing its capital into sustainability solutions. So TLC exists as a platform to help startups and solutions take their ideas from the lab to the market. And we've had 3 successful editions, and it's not just the grand winner that gets a grant of $1 million. We have other finalists that also get incubated, they get accelerator opportunities, and we've built this ecosystem now that basically helps these startups thrive. So my vision is to see a future where every single startup and every single solution is a sustainability solution, because that's absolutely where we need to be.
Yeah, well, not everybody is born with like the innovation, type of talent. But for us at CDL, we always believe in the power of youth, in passion and enthusiasm. That was also why we actually launched this the E-Generation Challenge, that's to actually unearth very deserving young leaders. We sponsor them and send them to climate challenge places such as the Arctic and Antarctica and even Raja Ampat and all that. And we want them to be our ambassador and come back to share the knowledge and all that. And as it so happened that you were actually our first winner of the E-Generation Challenge. The judging was fair and square, everybody. So she was really, the very well-deserving winner. And in fact, she set this high benchmark that in the end, that a lot of we face a lot of challenges that a lot of young people dare not to take part because no, I'm not Jessica Cheam, So we have to encourage them that no. She has set a very high benchmark, but doesn't mean that E-Generation Challenge we are looking at level, and you and Chua went to you really were inspired and come back to do more, and share with us your changing course, exhibitions and all those. Yeah,
thanks, Esther, and I'm very grateful to have been given the opportunity to be the first
you earn it.
winner and to go to Antarctica, which is a very, very special place. It's the most remote continent on Earth, and it's experiencing unprecedented warming. And so when I knew that I had the opportunity to go there, I started thinking about how can I raise awareness of what's going on there, and also to convert that awareness into climate action. And so, out of that, a lot of collaborations happened. There was collaboration with Channel News Asia on a climate change documentary, which was broadcasted all over Asia, and Eco-Business as well. We produced a documentary called From Asia to Antarctica to look at really some of the core climate issues that exists, and what as a society we can do to tackle that. So Changing Course is a passion project on eco-businesses. Our whole team is super proud that we have this public-facing climate change exhibition, which is staged almost every year. We had it in 2018 and 2019 and 2020, of course, because of COVID we can't. But we actually look around the region, not just in Antarctica, but also in the Arctic. We went to India, Singapore, and we actually assembled a collection of stories that looked really very critically at what segment of the population or of business can we actually improve and can we change. Because I have to say, sustainability is something that is very, full of platitudes. Everyone wants to save the world, everyone wants to be of purpose, but really actually the devil is in the details. What exactly can you change in terms of policy? What in terms can you change in terms of business practices? And how do you shift the mindset of the general population is very important. So Changing Course was one of the projects that came out of the E-Generation Challenge opportunity. And we continue to work with a very wide variety of partners, whether it's government, business, and civic society, to put these issues right at the front and to engage, consumers and stakeholders, to think about these critical issues.
Because climate change is not a national issue, it's a global issue. So we do need to raise the awareness that's to even local community to the global challenge. So how was your working relationship, or how did you really find that rewarding working with international partners such as Robert Swan or Yok Kiao, and maybe you can share a little bit on that, and how does it really help you in coming up with very exciting story, video, film, and communication platform?
Yeah, I think we've had the opportunity to interact with very huge personalities, very passionate people. And if we talk about Antarctica specifically, British explorer Robert Swan, he's obviously an inspiration, and he's the first man to walk to both the North and South Pole. And he was a huge inspiration to us on the trip. And so learning from him was obviously a very great experience. And we've taken a lot of that teachings into our work. And we've made film and documentaries and interviews. And because of our work, we've also interacted with a lot of organizations on the global stage, including the likes of the United Nations and the World Economic Forum. You mentioned Yok Kiao. He is actually the founding executive director of the UNGC, the United Nations Global Compact, and also a member of our International Advisory Board. And he is one of those godfathers of sustainability who's still 20 and 30 years on, still making passionate speeches and doing so much important work in the field of ESG and getting that quantified in the field of finance, for example. And so I think that's a very interesting experience. I just wanted to add something on the Antarctica experience, because you mentioned where was my aha moment, and I think the experience in Antarctica left me very conflicted. Because on one hand, I had this incredible opportunity to go there and see what it was, in this magnificent landscape and this natural world. But then at the same time, going there made me so aware that I was leaving a footprint, right? And the fact that I was traveling there created all sorts of energy consumption, and that humanity in general, when we travel, we create an impact. So there was this real huge sense of conflict, like, okay, I really appreciated that I have the opportunity here, but am I also the problem? And so then I guess I came out of that thinking, we offset the travel as well as the emissions from the exhibition, but it's just made me think very critically on how we can relook some of our deep-seated mindsets about consumption, and how can we be as responsible as possible when we produce and when we consume, because to live is to consume. That is the fact of life, right? We can't say that we are, to live is to exist and be consumed as humans, but how can we do so in a way that is regenerative and that is going to be treading lightly on the planet that we have? I think this is something that the world is still struggling with. Some countries are doing better than others, but again, this is where the media plays a huge role, because we are a very key part of that sphere of influence for people to realize that there are ways to consume responsibly and sustainably, and to rethink how we do that.
So of course, this brings us to all those big topic of sharing economy, circular economy. It will not be realistic to tell people don't just stay home, don't go out, don't consume, don't do anything. But we have to think of like how to do it, how to enjoy life and in a more sustainable manner. And when you talk about advocate, you know, of course, Robert Swan is a mutual good friend, and we launched our Saving Glacier here last year, and we hope that, you know, when he can travel again, we will bring him here for part 2 to, you know, see how he can actually introduce solar energy to power his expedition. So this is the part 2 of the whole thing. And I also remember a conversation with Dr. Jane. So she's now 85. Last year was 85 years old when we actually, you know, supported a fundraising event in Singapore. And there were also questions asking about Dr. Jane that, oh, you travel so much. What do you think about your, you know, your carbon footprint? But I think she, of course, she has spent her whole lifetime being a thought leader, being an advocate. And I think we have to look at the balance, and if she can influence thousands of people to become a green leader, and she needs to, if that requires her to travel. In fact, traveling takes a lot of energy out of her, you know,
yes, absolutely.
at her age and all that, and she's making sacrifices. And but I think we also look at really two sides of the coin. You cannot just say that it's because of traveling you shouldn't do anything like that. So I think thanks to COVID, we learn how to really make use of digital media, okay, and how to reach out to even more people. You know, like our Youth for Climate conversation, we now reach out to about 25 over country without even travel. So even when we can, you know, go back to the old normal, we can hold event, I think we will still want to, you know, look at how to continue to make good use of digital. Yes. That come back to my, you know, the conversation today, that you have been with the print media, you have been with digital media, and definitely the whole world is still evolving. What will you see the future of print? Some people hold a very pessimistic view about print, and you know, but digital media, sometimes you love it, you hate it, because the control of the, you know, whether it's fake news or whatever is a little bit difficult to control. Yes. So what do you know, how do you, you know, balance this love-hate relationship with digital media, and how do you really control the quality of it? And do you hold a pessimistic view about print media?
After actually, I'm an old school journalist, so I love the print media, and I still read the paper version of the Straits Times, if not at least the e-version, because it makes me feel like I'm reading the paper version. And I think print media is here to stay. There is a role for it, but I think that, of course, with the evolved media landscape, you know, print ad revenue has been dropping for a decade, and obviously there's a lot of online advertising revenue coming in. So I would say that print media will probably reach a steady state, and that it will find its loyal readers, and it will probably be relevant to an extent that there will be always a segment that will read media in print. But digital media absolutely has already dominated our landscape. And if you think about our social media landscape right now, you know, there's a lot of conversations going on about social media giants and whether they're news organizations and publishers. You know, I have a love-hate relationship with social media as well, because we put out so much of our content, and we have direct platforms to our readers, such as our website and our emails. But if we don't pay the social media giants, then our content doesn't get served to our followers. So we have to also be very wary as to, you know, how we distribute our content. And I think that in this day and age, you have to use social media, right? It's become part and parcel of everyday life. But how do you use it ethically? And you know, if you think about the recent documentary, The Social Dilemma, that's been so interesting. The conversations around ethical technology, ethical social media, consumption, you know, practices. And I think that that's something that we still need to talk a lot more about it, because if you look as the US elections is still playing out before us today, how much social media has had to play a role in polarizing the community. And so I think digital media is here to stay. It will play a very key role in influencing people, but we need to do that within a framework that is ethical and that, you know, promotes purposeful content that is true and factual, and all this really takes a lot of work. So I'm very excited that we're in this space and we're, you know, playing a role in this.
Wonderful. And to all those that who are on this chat, do send in your questions. And in fact, some are very, very good, you know, active participants already send in a couple of questions in my hand now. Maybe I should just address a couple of them. And okay, the first question is, Jessica, now that you have such a large platform, what are your next steps? can you share what is a typical day, for you, Yeah, so keep the question coming while Jessica is, addressing this in my hand now. Yeah.
Thank you so much for the question. Typical day for me, I work quite hard, I have to say. I enjoy my work, and that's why I do that. Lots of emails, lots of meetings, and of course, looking at the stories and the content that we produce, there needs to be a lot of strategic direction as to which stories that we can cover, because we have limited resources. And so therefore, a lot of my time is devoted to that, and then having a lot of conversations with our partners as well. And then I think the first question was, what are the plans? So eco-business now, we are, hit 3 million page views per year year to date, and we're very proud of that. But we want to grow even bigger, because if you think about it, we're not a mainstream news outlets, and we definitely can't compete with the mainstream news outlets, but we believe that there is a role for EB to grow as a platform. So today, everyone in Asia knows us. We are trying to think about how we can further that reach, and actually this year we built this very, very interesting feature, and that's multi-language capabilities. So on our platform now, we can actually publish in Zhongwen, in Bahasa, Tagalog, and Vietnamese, and that enables our content to go out to an even larger local audience. So in the very near future, we're going to see a multi-language eco-business, and then maybe in a few years' time, I'd love to see us grow from an Asian platform to a global platform.
Wow, exciting. And but the whole world agrees that Asia is where the fastest growings are going to take place in the next maybe decade or so. So I am really glad to hear that your big plan, and this is a very positive ambition to bring Asia to the world as well and bridge them together, because that is what we want to move to capital, market to finance change.
Yes.
So I think this is a really, really wonderful, fly the Singapore flag, please.
Of course, always.
Okay. The next question is how do you combat biases in this industry? And what are still your biggest hurdles being a woman in digital media and the tech, sector?
Okay, so I answered the first question first, right?
Yes,
Which is,
how do you combat biases in this industry?
Okay, I wanted to make sure that
it's journalism, and digital media, both industries actually.
Yeah. No, that's an interesting question. I think that actually, funny enough, the journalism newsroom is quite female dominated. But the management of newspapers is very male dominated.
So are many organizations.
Yes,
but the higher you go, you see less women.
Yeah, and I think that women leadership has come a long way in Singapore, and I'm super encouraged to see the work of the Council for Work Diversity and a lot of women groups in Singapore kind of championing the causes, and we're seeing improvements definitely, constantly, all the time. And one of my team members just shared a story with me today about how S&P Global has issued this report that showed that companies with female CEOs, their stock price is 20% better than male CEOs. So that was an interesting story that I saw today, which I thought I would share. But back to biases, I think it's definitely there, and it's actually prevalent among females and males, and also in industries, for example, vested interest, corporate interest. There's a lot of inertia for people to want to change, and therefore I think that's why it's really important to have conviction. If you have conviction and you have purpose, that's a lot easier to ground yourself in, in how to address those changes. So back to the question on digital media, I think that, the landscape has opened up so much that it doesn't really matter what gender you are in. You can really kind of make a name for yourself. And as we've seen with the democratization of social media and of publishing, anybody can just go out, publish a story, and get yourselves heard. So I think the crucial thing to keep in mind here is that what are you saying to the world now that you have this power and this platform? And that's why I think it's so important for us to be grounded in the principles of factual information, information that is accurate, timely, and is also purposeful.
In fact, in our field, sustainability and environmental conservation, interestingly, we have a lot more women leaders. Right? That's right. So what do you think, what do you think are the reasons behind it? Yeah.
I'm not to generalize here, but I think females are more nurturing, for one, and they tend to be more long-term minded as well. And I think that that's the reason why we gravitate towards issues like that. And but that's not to say that that male leaders or that male politicians or people that are in media who are male don't do that. And I think that that's something that's very important.
Great. Yeah. So there's another question here is how to, what are the tips, for creating impactful stories? I think applies to either print or social media or digital media. Yeah.
That's a very good question. I think to start off with, to write a good story, you need to be very grounded in principles of journalism. And that's, the very standard, like what's the news here? Who is it affecting? How is it playing out? And then we need to be looking really and paying attention to the areas where it's undercovered. So, there's a lot of coverage right now on a very, very large range of topics. And actually quite a lot of it is I would say, quite frivolous, right? So how do you actually look at some issues that deserve to be looked at? So if you pick a few things, waste management, very unsexy, right? Rubbish, but it's actually such a critical issue because our countries are all facing challenges in trying to process its waste, and actually we're facing resource scarcity as well. Then if you look at sustainable finance, also very technical, but it's an area that really needs to be looked at. And then another area which we've been trying to pay attention to is nature-based solutions. So we talked about climate change, we talked about biodiversity loss. I think nature-based solutions in which you're restoring ecosystems is something that's very important. And if you see global companies now kind of racing towards net zero, they have this strategy where you mitigate as much as possible, but whatever's remaining, you need to offset. So where are these offsets coming from? Renewable energy projects, ecosystem projects. And so I think these are areas which are not talked about as often in the media, and looking in those spaces will help you to create impactful stories.
Wonderful. So we talk about the environment, we talk about journalism, and now let's talk a little bit about women empowerment and diversity. And as you know, that Women for Green was also set up because in our building industry, it's always male dominated. We are happy to work with guys, and we all want to complement each other's strength and to come up to build greener and more sustainable. But there are actually really hurdles for women, especially when it comes to the balance of like taking care of home and the family versus career. And there are a lot of younger executives who actually always ask me the question, oh, I want to start a family, but would I, lose out in my promotion, and all that. And well, the company give me overseas opportunities, but I don't think my husband will like it or my in-law will like it,
Yeah.
So as a successful businesswoman now with 2 young children, right? One is going to primary school next year, right? You were just rushing from the interview here. So how do you balance? I want that to always talk to the younger executives. You don't have to give up your career,
absolutely,
for family.
Yeah.
And you don't need to, forgo your family life, just for career.
Yeah.
So how do you balance it? Maybe you want to share some tips?
Yeah, thanks, Esther. Well, I think that the idea that women stay at home and not pursue their career is quite outdated now. And we've seen that, in recent times that women are absolutely empowered to pursue their careers and to go back to the workforce. I think what's that has been a little bit more difficult is actually the distribution of household duties, because when it comes to rearing children, it is still very much a maternal role, and a lot of mothers feel that if I take 2 years off to have or 1 year off to have a child, then when I come back, my job isn't going to be there. And on that front, I would say this actually, relies a lot on the employers being enlightened, being supportive. And Singapore and a few other Asian countries, have done very well. The Nordic countries have obviously done super well in terms of providing maternity benefits and paternity benefits. But I think at the end of the day, it really comes down to time management, managing a business as well as managing children, setting aside very dedicated time to do one very well and then the other very well, as opposed to kind of being distracted all the time and trying to do both badly. And so I think that definitely there are a lot of challenges. And when I had my son, I took 6 months off work, and when I came back a little rusty, oh gosh, I have to get back into this pace and this rhythm. But then I realized that actually I was even more passionate after coming back, and I absolutely believed I was creating some meaningful change and that was going to be valid. And then when I had my daughter, 2 months, I went back to work after that, because I just felt that it was important for me to continue at that pace. But obviously, really set aside time also to spend time with our children, because they're young only ones.
Yes, I'm sure you can strike that balance. When there's a will, there's a way.
I try.
Yes.
I don't always get it perfect.
Yes, I know. Don't we all? We are all like workaholic mom and all that. Okay, this question is from Avon. She asked what would be the top 3 initiatives that would help to close the gap when it comes to sustainable practices between individuals, corporate, and community?
Wow, okay, that's
very cheap
question. Very big question.
Very big
The
question.
top 3 initiatives that would drive change. You know, I think that if you look at the global picture right now, right? I mean, I'm going to get quite technical now. If we want to look at the global picture, if we want to drive real change, we need to hit the segment of society that make the decision. So if I'm going to pick one topic, it would be the energy transition. We have to enable massive decarbonization. How do you do it? You need to tackle the top of the oil companies, the energy companies, and actually put enough pressure so that they can accelerate this. And to some extent, you're already seeing that. And that is the result of stakeholder pressure, investor pressure, individual pressure, coming to your question about individuals and communities. It's absolutely something that you need to drive. So if you take energy as one example, and then you look at our resources as the other example, you know, how you manage your resources, whether it's food, whether it's energy, whether it's waste. Again, we need these, you know, initiatives that, you know, really target this segment of the population. So if you talk about initiatives, it's everything from commitments. You know, there are a lot of commitments. The RE100 global initiative is a commitment to get companies to be 100% renewable energy. And if you talk about, like, you know, UNPRI, getting financial institutions to sign on and to commit that they will invest with only a responsible lens. These are some of the initiatives that target very broadly, you know, business and government sectors, but with huge impact. And so I think we need to be very targeted in our approach and to drive the change that we want to see.
Exactly. This question is from Asia. Very long question. Hi, Jessica. A lot of our data often shows that consumers of digital media fall within the younger demographics and may not necessarily be the decision makers we want to target at. So what would you recommend to better reach decision makers who may not be as active on social media?
That's a very good question. And actually, you know, the readership of eco-business has gotten younger and younger. It's true. I mean, in the past, we used to have, you know, we still have a very senior audience, but the population of younger readers is growing. And I think that the answer to that is really that we need to be using all platforms, right? Not just one platform. So it can be a combination of print media, social media, broadcast media, and everything in between to really get to the population. And there's no replacement also for community events, conversations like the ones that we're having right now, in which we can actually reach people and talk to them. Unfortunately, obviously, COVID has disrupted all physical events, but as you pointed out, it's very encouraging to see that we can transcend borders right now. I was moderating a forum for the UNGC just a month ago, and we had 10,000 people online from 100 over countries, and I think that kind of participation is there. And going back to I guess the older segment or senior decision makers, I think they're very connected now. If you're talking about the civil population, there are many governments across the world who are helping them becoming digitally included, because like it or not, it's going to be our way of life. So how do we not leave anyone behind? It's a very big question, and a lot of organizations are looking as to how we can get them on board and being part of digital communities as well that spill over to the physical offline communities.
In fact, because of the lockdown, I know some of the older generations, they learn how to do, Skype a lot better. I need to talk to my grandchildren. I can't go and see them. They can't come and see me. I need to Skype them.
Everybody Zoom experts.
Yeah, Zoom now, right? Yeah. Okay, this question is from Cheryl, our S&P good friend. She said, thank you for quoting for, S&P Global's Women and Diversity Research. So her question is, can you share a quick preview of EcoBusiness upcoming new initiatives, sustainability exchange that you want to talk about, right? And I have, as Esther mentioned, we have many sustainability leaders here as part of Women for Green who may be keen to know more about this sustainability exchange.
Yes. Thank you very much for the opportunity and the question, Cheryl. Sustainability Exchange actually is just about to be launched on November 20th, so I would invite everyone online to join us. It will also be streamed on Facebook Live, and it really is a mentorship program that's first of its kind here in Singapore, started by EV Impact, which is actually our non-profit arm, and social media giant Facebook. And the purpose of this mentorship initiative really is to get youths to co-create problems with mentors can guide them. And the idea is that we've given them this overarching mission that you need to solve Singapore's climate target and or sustainability targets for corporations. And I think that youths today are so so impassioned about this topic. You've seen the first SG Climate Rally, for example, and it's something that people care passionately about. But how can they be equipped with the tools to convert this knowledge into a real world business and policy context? This is what we want to bridge, because you can have very idealistic notions of what it means to be sustainable, but what does it mean to actually apply it in a business scenario, in actual legislation, in actual company practices? And so we want to help accelerate this understanding and this knowledge learning curve. And we want to help the mentors also gain fresh thinking, because I think the trap that we all fall into sometimes is that we have very certain ways of doing things, traditional mindsets. And I think that the exchange can actually go both ways, that the mentors, in accessing these fresh talents and fresh youths, they get all these ideas as to how they can position their company. And I think perhaps they also probably get some good feedback, how do the youths view their own organization, and where are some of the gaps they need to address?
Yeah, I mean, which remind me that I'm also part of the, Climate Action Alliance.
Yes,
yeah,
that's
the
right.
business, that you chair. So I really feel that the interaction, the exchange of ideas, no one person can really know everything. Right? Whether you're the C-suite, whether you have worked for 30 years, every day I'm still learning after 25 years in this journey. And I really love to work with the younger people, that they have no old baggages. They give you fresh idea. And at the same time, we can also share the really our life experience and how to apply certain theory into real life situations. So I think this sustainability exchange is going to be very, very exciting, and I'm glad to be one of your mentors as well. And I really hope that we can achieve something together. And this is one question from Xin Wei Xia. What is the best way to get started writing about environment, sustainability, and conservation issues? So must be someone who aspires to be a journalist.
This is a great question, and I love questions like these, because it's so important for us to have knowledge about what we're facing right now. And if you want to start, the easiest is to email me, and we will get you writing on some issues. No, but actually, honestly, jokes aside, anybody can start very easily just by reading the news that's out there, forming an opinion, doing research. I think that's the basis of any project, actually. And if you want to be publishing stories, I would say you have to have some writing skills, obviously. Getting yourself up to speed on what makes a good story, the succinctness of your writing, and the quality of your copy is very important if you want to convey ideas. So I would also recommend things like writing workshops, writing skills, journalism workshops, and then you can apply that set of thinking and writing skills into any issue that you're passionate about.
Okay, well, let's take a little a breather away from the business. Let's go back to your personal life. Okay. Now you are very, very successful, but I'm sure when you decided to make that switch, I'm sure you have a lot of sleepless nights.
Many.
And then I'm sure you also, have encountered a lot of barriers, whether, family, friends, or business associates say, are you crazy? SPH is such a, safe job, and then why you want to come out and, So I'm sure that, can you, share with us how to inspire the younger, executives who want to switch, their career. It may not be into a business, but just switch, from what they are doing. Maybe they have the calling to, to save the world. They want to come out and do something, about sustainability. So can you share with us what were the biggest, barriers, and how did you overcome it?
Thanks so much, Esther. I think entrepreneurship is not for everybody, and I would definitely say and be upfront that there were many, many times I just wanted to quit and just say, okay, I'm just going to go back into the corporate world and not do this, because it is very challenging when you have to run a business and pay salaries and raise revenue. It's a very different type of pressure. And I always joke with my deputy editor Robin that I would switch jobs with him so I could do the writing. but I think that is a very good question, because you need to be led by conviction, which is something that I mentioned earlier. If you want to leap into the world of entrepreneurship, you need to be convinced about what you want to do, and it needs to have purpose. Because if you are not convinced and you don't have purpose, then all the things that come at you, the obstacles and the challenges and everything along the way will just get you down. And you really need to have this, I guess, conviction, which even me at times, I was like, like working in sustainability is quite depressing, because you look at the state of the world and sometimes you think, I'm just one person, who am I kidding? It's so huge, and it requires such a concerted global effort to solve the challenges that we see today, and it can get very demoralizing. So then you always have to come back to, okay, I might not be able to change the world, but I can change one thing in this small sphere of influence that I have. And so if you begin with that, I think that's what keeps you going. It's what keeps me going, what keeps my team going.
Yeah, indeed, if you don't have passion, you will be, overcome with difficulty, and I'm sure you are really like a workaholic, sleep very little, that's what people tease me. It's like, do you sleep at all? I say, I do, but I sleep very few hours. But I'm really overwhelmed with excitement that now, like what the Business Times say, that sustainability has its moment now.
Yes.
But I hope that this moment is not going to be just a fad. It is going to be, and I actually asked this question before in another panel. And are you thinking that, do you think that we are already reaching the tipping point where sustainability has really become a mainstream political and business agenda?
There are two sides to this question. I think that it has definitely reached a certain momentum, because if you look at the global platforms and events like the United Nations, the G20, and so on and so forth, sustainability is absolutely at the top of the agenda. You look at the announcements made in the last 2 weeks, South Korea, Japan, and China pledging net zero targets. This is absolutely a momentum, and we have reached this tipping point. But even as this happens, there is still a large swathe of the population that don't care or don't know. And I think this is where we really need to kind of, work on the media part of it, like you said, but really actually just on social awareness and on societal awareness of sustainability issues. It's not really something that people think about. Again, a lot of people are thinking about bread and butter issues. So how can we instill that awareness so that it's part of our everyday life? It's still very important.
Yeah, and don't forget, back home here, we just see another announcement that sustainability is going to be at the core of how we can recover better by Minister Grace Fu. So what is your thoughts and what is your wish list for the renamed Ministry of Sustainability and Environment? I know that you have a chat, and I have a recent chat with Minister Grace Fu. So what is your take and what is your wish list?
I think it's absolutely super encouraging to see that the government remained the Ministry of Sustainability, because it's a very broad term, and it enables the ministry to work on the very core sustainability issues, which is not just environmental, but also, social and governance. But if you ask me what my wish list is, it would be that we would accelerate our climate change target. We have a target to be net zero as soon as possible in the second half of the century. I would love for that to be 2050, 2040. Of course, it's a very big move, and we can't get there overnight. But you said there's a wish list, so that's one of them. And I also wish that that we would kind of accelerate the very good initiatives that we have. I think MSC has done a great job in terms of the legislation around the EPR, the extended producer responsibility, the carbon tax. We're the first country in ASEAN to do it, but that can be accelerated, I think. And of course, we don't want to move too fast. I know the concern is there, and then we become uncompetitive compared to the other countries. But I think if we always live in that, mindset that we don't want to move too quickly, then we won't get to where we need to be. And so I would say, let's move quickly, and then we bring everyone along with us.
Precisely, and Singapore is in the best position because we are a hub of like standards, services, expertise, financing, and all that. I'm sure that if, like you said, bring more people together, build a larger ecosystem, I'm sure that we can move the needle faster. Okay, there are questions keep coming in. So this one is like, as there is greater global awareness on the impact of climate change and increased recognition of the connection between business performance and sustainability, what is the role of communications, in accelerating climate action and ESG integration for corporates?
communication is very important. I think I mentioned,
yeah.
the example that I given about the Asian banks and co-funding. We have to constantly communicate, and even from an organization level, if you have the ESG strategy and sustainability strategy, it's not enough just to have it. You have to communicate it and get buy-in from all your stakeholders, from employees to customers to your board of management, and your board and your senior management. And I think that people underestimate the value of good communications and of a good narrative. You need to have a narrative to enthuse people and to inspire people, and so that they understand what you're trying to do. And then externally with organizations, you see that there is a lot of brand and risk reputation around ESG performance. And if you are not communicating very clearly what your sustainability and ESG strategies are, and then reporting and disclosing it in a transparent and accurate manner, and then you can see these organizations starting to poke holes that, okay, you've said that you're going to do this, have you actually really done it? And so on this very technical point, Esther, I'm very pleased to know that CDL always gets sustainability assurance, and that is a third party actually verifying that the sustainability disclosure that you make is true. And just as financial information is being audited right now, I think that the trend would be that in the future, ESG information will be audited as well. And so stakeholders have the confidence that when a company says this is our carbon footprint, this is what we've done on diversity and inclusion, that they've actually done it and it's verified.
Precisely. ESG is no longer considered as non-financial anymore. So for corporates, actually our life is getting harder and harder. And you have to look at like decarbonization, and also look at digitalization and disclosure. But all these three areas are actually intertwined. And data, like you said, are very important. And how do we communicate? Especially now with ESG investment growing, leaps and bounds and all that. So how do you make yourself stand out? Set out from the many companies and attract funding, from the ESG investment sites. Okay, one more question is like, in most social media channels, you have followers or people who like your page. And this often means that you are preaching to the converted, okay? How do you attract the attention of and also engage with those who are the non-converts?
Yeah, this is a very, very good question. Because I think the passionate people who believe in sustainability and ESG are always out there attending events.
It's like others are like hiding. How do we break them out from the black hole?
Yeah, I know, and I think that this is absolutely a good question, and that's why in our outreach we constantly do public-facing events. So Changing Courses was one example where we actually staged a multimedia exhibition in the Art Science Museum, and these are people from the streets, walking past, and they come in and then they start to get engaged. And one of the best emails we got out of that was a teacher who came in and she saw our exhibition and she actually emailed the team and said, I had no idea of climate change and that it was this serious. And then she asked, can I share your videos with my class? And we went, of course, absolutely. And I think that is the challenge, that we are often in our own bubbles, and that is relevant for every single person. You're in your own kind of bubble to some extent. And so there must be that active outreach. For me personally, I tend to favor events when I get asked to speak at events that completely have no idea about sustainability. It could be a risk management conference, or it could be sports, or it could be something that doesn't have a very direct connection, but it is important to speak to people outside outside the circle.
Yes, and all that. And Singapore may be small. You'll be surprised that even our Green Library, my tree house, it has opened since 2013. When I talk to some people, it's like, oh, is that one Green Library for children? I've never heard of it. So we were like, oh my God, when we say too much, when we communicate too much, people may think that, oh, you're glorifying.
Yeah.
But when you thought everybody know, actually I'm not.
Yeah.
So that is actually a Green Library for children that we opened in 2013. It's a partnership between NLB and CDL. If you have young children from 3 to 12 years old, please bring them there. The Central Library basement one is wonderful.
I think my kids all the time.
Yeah. And then of course at our Botanic Garden is also another partnership. We have a zero energy green gallery there, and that also stage food exhibition there about garden, about botany, about environmental issues and all that. So we do have a lot of platform, but I also hope that more public will be more proactive to find out information. But this is where the media will play a very, very major role. Not just like pitching the story to media to get some, our logo, our name out, but really wants to raise awareness. With higher awareness, we hope to see more action to move the needle. Okay, I think we have a lot of serious questions already. Now we only have about, 5-6 minutes left. I want to go back to the, your personal life a little bit more. That okay, you are very successful as a mom as well, and you a scholar. You are really an achiever. Okay, as a mom, do you want to train your kids? It's like those tiger moms. Your mom was so good, always number 1 in class. I want you to be there. So with your 2 children, what is your wish for them, and what sort of attitude are you, engaging them? Are you really that force them to study, attend all the tuition classes, enrichment, or share with us how a mom, of your achievement. Yeah,
Esther, thank you very much. You're very kind. I don't see myself as successful, but I'm just grateful that I have a role and a team that is making some sort of impact. But to the question about my kids, I am quite a tiger mom, I have to admit. But I am not the typical tiger mom in that I want them to get 100 marks, and then if they get 99, then they're in trouble. No, absolutely not. The only demand that I make of them is that they try their best. So my son is 8. And he's struggling with Chinese, and I always is like pulling my hair out whenever I do it with him, and he gets below, he gets failing scores like 2 upon 10 or 5 upon 10, and I always tell him, look, it's okay if you get 2 upon 10, as long as you told me you tried your best. But if you didn't try your best and you were playing and you were distracted, then no, that's not acceptable. And it's funny you asked about my kids, because I took them to a recycling show. We were doing this recycling video with Semcorp, and it's basically about teaching kids to recycle. And I thought that my kids are so exposed to sustainability issues, they'll be fine. And so Jason Godfrey, our host, was asking my son a question: do you know what's recycling? And he's like, and he took a long time to answer that question, and I was so upset because I was like, what? You don't know what's recycling? It was so hilarious. And then when Jason asked him, does anyone do you recycle? He was like, no, only my mom recycles. And so I was like, oh no, what do you mean? I keep asking you to put these bottles in the bin, and like you're not. Yeah. And so I was a little disappointed, and it just was really hilarious because I work in this space and they're so exposed to it, right? And I assume that I've assumed that they've absorbed it, but actually you have to be very concerted in the messages that you want to impart with them. And I hope that through action, like that, when we go out, we never go to malls and things like that. We just go out to nature. Go and have some time in the fresh air and the space to learn to love nature, because you can't protect what you don't love. And I think that, a lot of kids today, they grow up in cities and they don't get that exposure, and it's really sad. And, with COVID as well, it's kind of sad that, we can't take them to the experiences where they can experience even more nature. But I think we have a lot of that in our doorstep. And I'm super grateful that Singapore indeed actually is very green, and there's so many parks where I live, there are 4 parks around me. And I always try my best to take them out there and take them even, just downstairs, take a walk, and just around us, appreciating what's around. So no, the answer is I'm not your typical tiger mom.
Yeah, I think so too, because I mean, life is not just determined by your grade, and you also need to see what are the larger challenges in the world and how you can do better. So with this, I think we are 1 hour up. I know it's a Friday night. I'm sure a lot of people have planned for dinner and drinks and all that. And we're really, really happy to have you to kickstart this
so much,
Trailblazer, Trailblazers in digital media. I'm sure that many of our participants today also get to know a little bit more about this tiger mom, green mom, and
thank you so much for spending your Friday night.
So for those that we still have questions, you are welcome to send to us, and we will forward it to Jessica, and she is more than willing to help share her insight and answer your email as well. And everyone have a very green and happy weekend, and thank you so much again,
Thank
Jessica,
you, Esther,
and hope you can enjoy,
Go spend some time with the kids.
Yeah, okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you,
See you
everyone.
again in the next Women for Green session. Okay, bye-bye.
Bye.